Okay, so waking up the Greens. So the purpose of the meeting is to discuss this. The pioneers of the Green movement appear to have lost their way. So, around 25 years ago, they forsook their core values and adopted instead a kind of fake green agenda centered around global warming and carbon taxes and sort of grand industrial alternative energy schemes, and more latterly a kind of technocracy, very sort of invasive surveillance style technocracy. So all of this constituted a major detour from the grassroots bottom-up ecological values that informed the early pioneers. And we're meeting today to discuss ways of awakening members of the Green movement to the fake narrative on man-made climate change and the hidden agenda of the Great Reset and the Fourth Industrial Revolution, amongst other things. First, for the benefit of those who may come to watch this video in the future, I'll just do a brief introduction to our panelists, to whom I extend a very warm welcome on behalf of the Hardwick Alliance. Thank you very much for your time and input. First of all, David Icke, a man doubtless known to all of you. He hardly needs an introduction, but for the sake of completeness, let us say that there's probably no other person who's done more to expose the corporate globalist New World Order cult. His many books and articles and interviews and video productions and his presentations at large venues throughout the world are the means by which he conveys his holistic spiritual commentary on the challenges facing humanity. David is a committed ecologist, and he joined the Green Party in the late 1980s, I believe, I'm correct in saying that, when the values of the party were still intact. And secondly, we have Sir Julian Rose, who's captioned as Bureau, not sure what that is, but Sir Julian is a pioneer organic farmer who twice led UK dairy farmers to victory against the government's attempts to ban unpasteurized milk sales in 1989 and 1997. Sir Julian is Baronet of Hardwick and owner of the Hardwick estate near Reading, which he has operated as an organic farm for many decades. Julian is co-founder of the Hardwick Alliance for Real Ecology. Together with his Polish wife, Jadwiga, Julian's very active in uniting farmers in the UK and defending small family-run farms throughout Poland against the ever-growing threat from big agriculture. And Julian's the author of several books and many articles which offer inspiring insights into the spiritual dimensions of human existence. And they sound an urgent clarion call to action in the face of the many technological distractions that are taking people further and further away from their connection with the earth and the food production which sustains their physical being. Justin Walker is the founder and a powerful driving force behind the New Chartist movement, which, if you don't know, is the campaigning wing of the British Constitution Group. Justin's a keen political ecologist who joined the Ecology Party, which later became the Green Party, in 1978, where he campaigned for the party and stood in various local and general elections on numerous occasions. And Justin held various offices within the party, including organising their national conferences and so on. And within the Green Party, Justin became good friends with David Icke, who helped him realise that political parties are not the answer. Justin left the Green Party in 1992, disillusioned with the infighting and bickering. And Justin is the other co-founder of the Hardwick Alliance. Justin's written a great many well-researched online articles, and in recent years has led various initiatives to promote discussion of the Bradbury pound, otherwise known as the as sovereign money or sovereign national credit, with the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the House of Commons Treasury Select Committee, and the Bank of England. Over now to Sandi Adams. Sandi was also a member of the Green Party. She has for many years been an indefatigable researcher into United Nations Agenda 21 and 2030. And she now runs the excellent sandiadams.net website, which I have to tell you is a veritable trove of valuable evidence and information. And she was instrumental in alerting Justin to the realization that the UN is not actually a force for good. Together with Piers Corbyn and Mark Windays, Sandi spent much time touring the country, presenting their Bigger Picture seminar, where she speaks on her specialist subject of Agenda 21 and 2030. And Sandi has become very much an integral part of the resurgence of real green values through her networking and her deep grasp of the subject matter. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Welcome. My name's Adrian Price. I bill myself as a kind of general purpose truth and freedom activist, with a recent emphasis on 5G campaigning. My professional background was in software engineering and electronics, from which I'm actually now retired. I'm the webmaster for the Hardwick Alliance and the New Chartist Movement website. And also I work on the Legal Action Against 5G campaign with Michael Mansfield QC, and we're just in the process of trying to take Her Majesty's government and 3 named Secretaries of State to the High Court for their failure to uphold their legal. So just a very quick bit about the Hardwick Alliance for those who may not be familiar with it. The Hardwick Alliance for Real Ecology, otherwise known as HARE, H-A-R-E, was born in February 2020 at a gathering at Hardwick House on the Hardwick estate in South Oxfordshire. Now, HARE is an alliance of activist groups, starting originally with the New Chartist Movement, and now including Save Our Rights UK, Farms Not Factories, and the International Coalition to Protect the Polish Countryside, amongst others. HARE suggested a working collaboration that would counteract the current abuses of the democratic process by upholding the practice and virtues of common law and putting an end to the private debt-creating central banking systems and promoting real ecology in place of the current corporatized and sort of fear-based and lie-ridden green version being promoted by the corporate globalists through their so-called Green New Deal. So this collaboration has since borne fruit, and with a growing group of committed activists now joining together under the HARE banner to share skills and perceptions in counteracting the 5G rollout and the COVID-19 sort of multi-impositions, whilst at the same time undertaking research and activism towards the establishment of a new and genuinely green society that embraces a spirit-led vision of truth and justice and freedom. So I don't know whether anybody has anything they'd like to add to that before we proceed.
I would just say it's all about the empowerment of the people rather than the empowerment of the psychopaths.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so to our questions. That took us 15 minutes. To our questions. Number one, the grassroots supporters of the Green Movement should be our natural allies. Is it possible or even desirable to draw those who have detoured back into the fold so that green predominantly stands for a united movement able to defeat the WEF's nightmare green fascism scenario? And I'll just throw that open to the panel to comment as you wish.
A big subject matter. It's
Well,
hard to know.
well,
I'll have a shot at it to get it running. Basically the feeling of being green, of course, has been utterly distorted, and that's what you were just saying, that the green color has now been made into something which is essentially black, actually. And so it's black is being called green, let's put it that way around. But the real green stems from people's feeling of connectedness with nature, actually. And when I got into organic farming for the first time in 1975 and started to convert the Hardwick estate, it was really because I had this longing to connect up again with nature, having worked quite a long time in cities before that, abroad and in England. So for people watching and wanting to understand the motivation behind being green, it's being connected with nature, and it's holistic because nature connects everything and everybody. Nature is basically a reflection of the divine. We, however, also have brains, consciousness, and the ability to bring about change, which the animal kingdom doesn't have those specific things. The animal kingdom has the divine quite naturally expressed. It doesn't have the ability to make actual change. So I think what we're really about is how to make change collectively in a united spirit for all people that feel a very strong desire to get back to their roots and get back to nature.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. You can hear me okay, can you?
Yes.
Oh, great, yeah. Well, yeah, that's where I'm coming from. And it's funny, my other work fits in with what Julian's just said, because we've lost touch with actually the nature of reality itself. And I've seen this so much in the so-called green movement. So we have a body reality decoding system that can see a band of frequency which we see as form with empty space between it. That's what our body brain decoding systems manifest as our reality. What's missing is the fact that if we could see more into the visual field, we'd see that everything we perceive as form with empty space in between it is connected with a field of energy, a field of consciousness. And the way that humanity is overwhelmingly controlled is to manipulate our perceptions to withdraw into basically perceiving everything through the five senses. And when we do that, we disconnect this influence and this connection with the field, as I call it, that connects everything. So when you look at a tree or a forest or a landscape, and you're coming from that connectedness with the field, well, the landscape and the forest and the tree is all part of that field, and therefore there is unity. And you feel that unity through the heart. You feel it in the connectiveness you feel with the natural world. And like Julian was saying, you know, I joined the Green Party because I felt this connection to what we'll call it nature, and I was seeing it being destroyed. And in the Green Party at the time were still people who had that connectiveness. What I've seen is the green movement withdraw into mind, withdraw into five sense mind and out of that sense of connectedness with nature. And thus the green movement has been transformed from one that has empathy and connectedness with nature to one that it basically is looking from a mechanical material point of view. It may claim it doesn't, but it does. And I'll give you a very quick example. I go out walking in the countryside, and there's a walk that I've been going on for years and years and years. It's absolutely beautiful. It's an old railway track, and nature's all around you. There's no division between you and nature. And this has been going on. The farmers own the land and all that stuff. And it's been brilliant. Then, very recently, a chunk of that land alongside the path was taken over by a green organization. I know they're green because they were wearing green t-shirts. And they're called the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust. So the next, well, not the next few times, the next many times now they've taken over the land, I'm going on my walk to the sound of chainsaws. And I'm seeing mature trees, big mature trees cut down by these greens. And then I realized why they're cutting them down. They're building a big, bright steel fence right up to the path, which basically says, this land is ours, keep out. And I talked to one or two of them, and what I didn't find, especially in the behavior and the fence, was any empathy or connection to what they were doing. The fact that they were creating this mechanical division in a place of beautiful nature, they couldn't see it. What I was talking to were people who were looking from a state of mind. And you know, from where I'm coming from, I look at a beautiful landscape and I see all the wind towers, the wind turbines, and my heart sinks. But to the mechanical mind that is coming only from that level of perception, they will see that as a good thing because it is fighting global warming or whatever. And this is the point I'm making, is that the green movement has withdrawn from the heart in terms of its connection to all that is, and it's gone into its head. And it's a very different entity to what I joined.
Absolutely. Can I just say also that I think a way of getting through to people, and what you said is absolutely, I'm absolutely on point with that, because it is moving away from the natural to the unnatural. And that's what, this technocracy movement is all about. And it was kind of revived in the 1970s by Zbigniew Brzezinski. He revived the technocracy movement of the 1930s and brought it forward. And he was a member of the Trilateral Commission, and he was quite open about it. He made a big speech in 1972, I think it was, about how they were going to bring in the technocracy into the green agenda. And it was all about money, basically, because when they held the Earth Summit, which was effectively when Agenda 21 was launched, all those globalists that actually created the Earth Summit had all invested in the carbon credit banks, and it's all about the money, and we know this, and now it's all about the money. And if people really were, aware that this is all about the money, it's not about the people, and it's not about nature. It's the antithesis of nature, of natural. It's mechanical, and it's not human. And I think if we could get that over to people in the Green, who've joined the Green Party, because they're following it almost like a mantra, because it's green, it must be good. So anything the Green Party says, they will chop down trees and put up fences, because they think it's biodiversity, it's protecting the planet, it's protecting nature. If people were able to see through that, that complete lie, then maybe we could make some headway, I think if it's about really understanding that it's about a money-making machine behind everything, not about nature or CO2 or anything else.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I just feel sad about it all, because as I say, I joined the Ecology Party back in 1978. I met some lovely people. I could mention Brig Ubridge. I will mention him because he was a lovely man. TP Valley. We used to have the green gatherings. We had gentle, wise people, really nice people who you wanted to spend time with. And I went back to the the Green Party conference at Newport 2 years ago, and I got thrown out because I dared to challenge Caroline Lucas. I said, why? That there are protesters outside the conference who are saying that the Green Party, the leadership, is refusing to allow any debate of 5G on the conference floor. I said, come on, Caroline, what what's going on? This can't be right. Next thing I know, I'm being thrown out of the conference. It was cold. There were still the same good people there. I remember all those long years back, but there was just some sort of like a clipboard mentality. It was robotic. In fact, you know, it had lost its soul. It lost its spirit. And I still see a lot of good people. We need them back. We need these people back. They were really great people, and they've been hijacked. That's the only word to use. They've been hijacked from a spiritual coming together to a mechanical for money, as Sandi says, all for money. And it's just cold. It's horrible.
Yeah, but it's a kind of interesting point, you know. We're using this term green for a group. But the green that I was talking about, and Julian was talking about, and you were talking about, is a state of consciousness, a state of awareness. And the new green is a different state of awareness. So where's that state of awareness now? Well, I've just been on a couple of massive marches, freedom marches in London. And I've talked at some rallies in Trafalgar Square. That's where it is. Those people that are pushing back on the fascism, and that connects into lots of other hoaxes and manipulations as well, of course. That's the spirit. That's where it lies. You know, I've been on protests over the decades against wars and all these different things, but the protests, they're almost not protests, they're almost celebrations. You find in these marches today of all races, all backgrounds, all ages, is one of love, it's one of joy, it's one of respecting another's right to be different. All the things that we talk about in terms of the spiritual is starting to come out among those who are seeing through the lies and seeing through the current hoaxes. And you know, from that state of awareness, it's in touch with spirit in the sense of the connectedness of everything, but it's streetwise. It can see the lies also. It can see the manipulations also. And so I think, you know, that's where the if you like, the revolution of consciousness is coming from. And you know, I just hope that those people still following the green caravan will see that and realize that represents where they once were coming from, rather than the mind-dominated green left brain intellectual myopia that currently runs the green movements of the world.
I'd like to jump in there, David. I can't agree with you about that. This is actually an excellent point, that you've got the sort of mass of people that come on these rallies, which are getting bigger and bigger, it seems to me, London and Manchester and all around England, are coming together based on the same principle that we started off by talking about, the need to feel empathy with other people, to feel connected up. I think this is the major thing, because after all, what the hell has this lockdown thing been about? It's been about separating everybody, trying to starve them of that instinct, trying to literally make people never want again to be too close to anyone else in case they catch some disease. So if this is the overall tone now happening, I think it's extremely positive. And it is coming from another angle. We, so to speak, Greens of the old school do need to recognize exactly what David's saying, that this is now a highly eclectic movement, combining urban color, different colors, different races, ages, beliefs, and all the rest of it. I give an example or two, because I was for a very long time a board member of the Soil Association. For those who don't know what the Soil Association is, it was a charity established in 1946 to move against the rapid movement into agrochemical farming and monoculture. And it was founded by some extremely unusual individuals led by Eve Balfour, who was a soil scientist, hence the name Soil Association. And it made a point about how there is a wheel of health, which is based on the connection between soil, plant, animal, and man. And if you break that at any one point, the other three elements get sick or die. So it's a vision of a holistic way forward to do with food and farming and to do with health. But what happened, I joined the Border Soil Association in around 1986 and was also, like Justin was describing, working very closely with excellent people who all felt very strong empathy on the issues that we were involved in, all worked voluntarily, created organic standards together, set the whole thing going actually in England and even to a certain extent the rest of the world. But by the middle of the 1990s, this was beginning to crack. And what was the major issue here? Because we were mostly farmers then, supermarket. They all suddenly started thinking, we want to get our stuff into the supermarket. We want to get organic food, which the original Soil Association founders said should be sold fresh, local, and full of flavor. You know, that's the criteria for real food, not packaged, globalized, and flavorless, unless you add the tomato sauce to it. You know, so it just swung, as we were saying earlier, towards the money and towards the power and towards the vision of being big, important, therefore able to make change because you're big on the world stage. And this was the beginning of the end of the real organic farming movement. Now, there are people who hung on, and well done them. I'm one of them, and there were a number of others. But many of the other real Greens who led Soil Association later, 2000 to 2000 onwards, swung right off that path and got behind the big deal, big supermarkets. The amount of food you sell is the only way you're going to grow the organic movement. This was the expression used. Only way to grow the organic movement is to get into the supermarkets because that's where everybody buys their food. Well, it's a very, very confused view, in my view, of that one.
Yeah, if I could just come in there a second, because what you've just described, Julian, is what I experienced in the Green Party. Because you'll remember this, Justin. when I was in the Green Party, there was this, it was called the fundies and the reloads. Do you remember that? And I used to call myself a fundy reload because what I wanted was the fundamental message, but communicated in a way that people could understand. And I saw the funders and the reloads, at loggerheads and stuff, and it all got very unpleasant. But the reloads basically took over the party, didn't they? And yes. So, what I feel is that one of the worst things you can do is seek power. You seek political power. If political power comes your way, it comes your way because of what you're saying and what you stand for. And so the political power becomes secondary to saying and acting as you feel and you believe. And this was the fundies. These were the fundies. This is what we believe. You don't think we're crazy? Well, think we're crazy. Once you think you start seeking power, and when we had that big election result at the end of the 90s, 1989, the European elections, that's when the relos took over because they thought, well, okay, what do we have to stop saying and what do we have to stop standing for us to get more power? And so the seeking power became more important than what you believed and what you stood for, and therefore what you believed and what you stood for started to get diluted. And oh no, he's an embarrassment. Don't let him in front of a camera. And this was the start of the whole thing. And I do think we need to go back to that simple state where we say what we think and we live what we believe. And what happens then happens. Yeah, the alternative is to try to seek power and you lose yourself, which is exactly collectively what the Green Movement has done.
And we've got to get,
So we're pretty much out of time on this topic. Okay. And the core of the topic was really around those who are still within the Green Movement. And is there any possibility of waking them up and getting them to join the fold? And of course, I think you need to consider what level in the organization you're talking about. Are you talking about grassroots members who I suggest are our, as I said earlier, are our natural allies? They've got all the right values, and they're bold, and they're prepared to stand up for what they believe in, just like the people who go to London and on the protests. We don't really know to what extent those members, current sort of grassroots members, have been brainwashed into the Green New Deal way of thinking. And we probably don't have that much insight into which of the leaders still actually have some sympathy for the holistic real green values. And I think we need to understand both of those things in order to answer the question we set ourselves.
Can I just come in? One of the original Chartists who stood to open up Parliament and to make it more accountable to the people in the 1830s and 40s. They had a certain number of requirements. They had 6 requirements. The only requirement they didn't succeed was to have annual parliaments, because they could see the last thing you want is professional politicians, people who believe they are chosen to lead the country, to save the country, whatever it is. And they recognize that we are all here to serve. And service is something that's extremely important. And so the Greens, the real Greens, are those who are here to serve and want to help others and to do their bit. The fake Greens are the ones who are on career paths, who somehow believe that once they're elected, they'll be elected again and again. Look at me, I'm on a pedestal, I'm doing good stuff for you. And this is the mentality that the psychopaths have latched onto to lead them up the fake green path and the Green New Deal. We've got to get people to feel we are here to serve. That is our duty, to serve. And we're not here for our own personal benefit and career path.
I think with leadership, you've basically, if you talk about the leadership level, you've basically lost them, because they have pursued the what do I have to say to get more power, and therefore they've lost themselves. And at the same time, the programmer becomes a pawn of the program. So a certain belief in what green is and all the climate change and stuff has been sold. And so because so many in the green movement believe it, the leaders are also, they are only going to prosper if they repeat the same program. So it's the programmers kind of programming the programs. And it is the people who still have that feeling for nature. They're the ones that we have a chance of getting to see that the green movement is a political, actually Marxist operation, and nothing to do with nature anymore. That's where I think the change can take place.
Yes, actually, well said again. I'd like to bring in the fact that the instinct, which other people I talk with, and I meet also in Poland, incidentally, which is where I'm talking from now, are feeling that they can only express themselves and make sense of things at a much more local and regional level, not via centralization process, not via trying to convince someone in power to change the rules, not via any of the methodology which they've been told is the only way you can bring about change. They're actually beginning to feel that we could bring about change in our town, in our village. I'm leaving out cities for a moment because, that's a whole nother equation when you get into the millions. But when you're in the 200,000 and below mark, you actually can almost feel a sense of connection, holistic connection with people. When you get down to the village level, 500,000, possibly a bit more, then you really get into the meat of the whole thing. Because actually, at a village level, in the countryside, you could be totally self-sufficient. And this is what we've been trying to do at Hardwick, on the Hardwick estate for many years. I sold all my products only locally. except for grain. That was the one thing I had to send off into the main marketplace in order to be processed and sold on the wholesale market. But everything else I sold directly to the public. And that built up a really core group of people who really understood the meaning of real food and flavor and quality and good health, incidentally, especially with unpasteurized milk, of course. So actually, the locality for the change is, I believe, going to come right back to where we are in our communities and to reconnect people in the communities to the land around them via developing relationships with farmers who at least are not doing the worst kind of agriculture and hopefully pro-ecological. You know, I'm not going to say Soil Association certified because that's become a major problem in its own right. It's a massive book, coming like a sort of Bible you have to get through now in order to be certified. And that's not right. We have to get back to much, much simpler way of processing all this. And that is going to be local timber, local food, local renewable energy on a human scale. Those are the two words that I come back to over and over and over again. Human scale.
Yeah, just very quickly, I'm absolutely in with that, because one of the mind programs that people fall for is, while they may not like centralization of power, they still see centralization of power as the vehicle to get what they want, which is decentralization of power. It's not going to happen. You're absolutely right, Julian. We've got to start with the individual expressing their own freedom and their own uniqueness and their own sovereignty, and then collectively we'll get somewhere. If we keep looking for politicians to change it, they're not there to change. They're there to perpetuate an agenda. And so there's billions of people in the world. The number of people in full knowledge who are manipulating the direction of that world are, by comparison, a handful. So the answer's so blatantly obvious. We have to start expressing our own sovereignty, and that has to be in the local community.
Yeah.
So we can get back to human discourse.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I feel also that in a way, the people who haven't woken up, they haven't really, I know this sounds cruel, but it's a fact, that they haven't been hit hard enough. It doesn't hurt enough at the moment. And we have woken up because we could see it coming and they didn't. And the thing is that I think the whole community level will really kick in when things become difficult, say food shortages or whatever. And it'll be an organic process, and it'll be quite a painful process, because no matter how much you tell people, they're not going to listen until it really affects them. And that's the problem. I feel is that, you know, I've noticed a massive migration of people trying to move out of the cities. I mean, I live in Somerset, and, you know, there's been a massive, you know, the houses are being snapped up and the land's being snapped up because people do, you know, people are realizing, the people in the cities. But you see, if you live in a city, how do you have access to that organic food and stuff? You don't. So I think forming those communities in the rural areas, which, let's face it, is what they don't want us to do. They want to evacuate us eventually into the smart cities, is to bring that huge community food resource thing going, so that we all have, and people don't feel alone and isolated. And I think that's another thing, is people join the Green Party because they feel that a sense of doing something, you know, even though it's not actually, you know, ticking the boxes, because we know they're supporting the whole technocratic agenda, you know, 5G. And we've won a lot of Greens over the 5G issue, which is brilliant. But I don't understand how anybody can still be involved with them, knowing that they're supporting 5G. Yeah. But there you are. People don't feel it unless it affects them. And I think that's why the community thing is so important.
Yeah.
And
I think we can take some encouragement from some trends. There is, for example, a very large and rapidly growing network of cooperatives throughout the country, and they are very much focused on the idea of local sort of mutually supporting communities and access to organic food produced locally, getting to establish working relationships with their local farmers. And there's quite a few on the south coast near to where I am who are doing this. And as I say, there's a very large and rapidly growing national network who they're kind of getting their act together in terms of making it easier to start new groups with lots of guidelines and materials and template documents and what have you. And the other thing is that another trend is sort of local truth and freedom movements. There's a freedom hub that acts as a sort of, only as a very loose coordinator of local hubs. And I belong to a couple down here on the south coast, and there are literally hundreds throughout the country. So they're all loosely interconnected. There's a website through which we can contact the members of these local groups who would be, I would imagine, absolutely delighted to help us promulgate this message. So
could I come in? One very important aspect, as David says, it's finding our sovereignty. And the best way we can find our sovereignty is also to take back full control of money creation and money supply. One of the things I find so depressing about the current Green New Deal and the green movement that's supporting it is that they are in bed with the bankers. They are in bed with the central bankers, who are effectively the people who are controlling the world in a feudalistic system. They are the ones who decide there's going to be a third world. They are the ones who have enabled appalling poverty to take place in so many parts of the world. And I just find it incredible that the Greens, like many others, don't bother to ask the question, how is money created and by whom? And once you understand the central banking system, you realize very quickly who your real enemy is. Now, one of the things that's very, very important is for localized currencies to be created. This is not a token, like where you exchange a token of sterling for a token for a local currency, like a Totnes pound or the Bristol pound, where you then go and spend it in local shops. This is the creation of actual new money based on the wealth and labor potential of your community or your region. And that way you completely take apart the central banking political system that, well, effectively the City of London controls Parliament. And our parliamentarians do never, ever question money creation or money supply, as I've proved. So this is absolutely crucial for sovereignty, that we take back full control of money creation and money supply.
Yeah, I agree with that, Justin. But I do think that this new emerging society is staring us in the face, including the kind of things you just talked about, and it's emerging through necessity is the mother of invention, for a start, and that the situations we face need certain responses. And I go back to these marches and these people pushing back on the because what's happening is very clearly two societies are emerging. You've got those that are just following the carrot and therefore doing everything they're told to do. And that's the old society getting more and more entrenched in its coma. And then you've got this other society, which not only is aware that the world is different to what they thought it was, but there is now an urgency, not just to talk about it, but actually do something, because you've got the passports, you don't get this genetic manipulating, then you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do the other. And I'm starting to see this happen. For instance, here on the Isle of Wight, there are groups that have spontaneously kind of got together, including the collective group at the Isle of Wight, who are pushbackers, as I call them. And you'll see that, what do you do? I'm a plumber. All right, well, so the group all uses that plumber now. And then you've got people who are producing food or running shops and stuff who are part of this group. So this group then interacts with them and doesn't go to the other ones. And you can see it organically emerging through necessity, and the very fact that those involved are not going with the herd, are not doing what they're told, are not unquestioning automatons, means that not only do you have the urgency of a situation that's emerging, that something has to happen, you've got the consciousness, the streetwise consciousness, the open consciousness that can actually do something about it in a way that basically creates another society that operates almost outside of the mainstream. And I think that's emerging, and we've only just begun.
Well, that's very interesting. I'm delighted to hear you say that, David. And I've often felt, you know, I'm coming from an aristocratic background, but I don't fit the mark, you might say, particularly. In fact, I'm pretty much in another camp, if you want to call them camps. Why I've always felt the most empathy in the work that I've done on the land and with other people in farming and forestry and building and God knows what else, it's always been the working people. And, you know, when I was in Australia, I worked on a huge outback farm where the main crew were Aboriginal Australians. And the guy that ran the place was a white Australian. And he was a really tough manager, and he wanted to get everything done on time, exactly so and so, exactly so and so. Whereas the workforce were really feeling wise, indigenous, tribal people that knew far more than this man knew. Now, this is interesting. I'm saying it probably because I feel this exists within the sort of society we have in England, particularly, but everywhere, of course, which is a split society according to class, according to money, according to difference, according to social status, and God knows what else. But if you want to get a job done, and you want it, and it's getting close to the time when it's based on absolute necessity, who would you turn to? I think David's used a very interesting analogy in the past about a pyramid. What keeps the pyramid up? What keeps the top end of the pyramid afloat is the bottom end of the pyramid. Take the bottom bricks out and the whole damn thing comes down. So actually, I think it is the working people who have a gut type sense of what's coming and what they need to do to keep their families fed and have a life. Those are more the people we should be dealing with. And actually, Justin, I was thinking of that in relation to this new newspaper, you know, which is being launched from the north of England, I believe, you know, or Midlands and North, in a very gutsy sort of area, where when you're talking with the people on Skype who are going to be involved in it, they all have broad accents of and sort of like that, you know, and you're thinking, hey, we haven't had this sort of thing on these conversations for ages. Really streetwise people who are very much used to having to work hard to survive.
Well, I'll just tell people what it's called. The new paper, which will be coming online and printed in about 3 or 4 weeks, probably sooner, is going to be called Brighter Times. And the strap line is Wisdom and Common Sense to Change the World. And I think it's got a lot of good contributors coming up, including yourself, I hope, Julian, Sandi, David will be after you as well. The point is, it's going to be a paper that's going to be very positive, very upbeat, and
it's for everybody, isn't it? It's for all the people.
Everybody, and it's truly sovereign, and no one's going to try and steer it down a wrong path. So it's. I hope it's going to be really good. Brighter Times, that's what it's called.
Fantastic.
Yeah, you know, what you were saying there, Julian, you're describing an area of society that the Green Movement's left behind.
Yes. And
I don't think we can discuss what's happened to the Green Movement without discussing the woke mentality. And the incredible inversion that's taken place in what we call the left. Because when I was growing up in the 50s and 60s, the left was demanding freedom of speech. It was demanding freedom in general. And it was challenging the power of finance and challenging the power of privilege, where it was being unfairly imposed on the people. what has happened is this woke mentality, which is funded by the billionaires, the billionaire corporations, has taken over the left. It's hijacked the left, and in that hijacking, it's hijacked the Greens. And so now the dynamic is not between the left that wanted social justice and freedom and those that were destroying it. The dynamic is now between, because of identity politics and wokeness and political correctness, it's between the fake left, the hijackers of the left, and the billionaires who are no longer the bad guys as long as they fund the woke organizations and the climate change organizations and speak the language of woke. And when I say that, that's what I mean. They speak the language of woke. They obviously have absolute contempt for it, but they say the right things. They hand out the checks in the right directions, and they basically bought the original or hijacked the original left by buying that which is taken over from it. And the Green movement has been part of that whole process of moving from, because I remember the Greens, one of the reasons I joined them is because they stood for social justice, they stood for fairness. They stood for, but suddenly now you look at them and there's been an inversion, a complete inversion. And now the billionaires are the good guys as long as they speak the language and write the right checks. And this has been a process that's been going on since 1992 in the Earth Summit in Brazil, headed by a frontman for these very people, this very force called Maurice Strong. And that was the start. And a lot of Greens, I know them, I remember them, not least in America. They were pulled in by the elite, if you like, that was massively behind that, Rothschilds, Rockefellers, etc., speaking the language of environmentalism, etc. But what's missing is the streetwiseness. Hold on just a bloody second. What is this multimillionaire oil baron, Maurice Strong, wanting to dismantle the industrial society for? Why do the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, who've done so much to destroy the environment, suddenly want to save it? This is the streetwise part of it, but they got pulled in. And they've got more and more pulled in to the point now where basically that mentality runs the whole show.
Yeah,
Can I just say quickly that I was being pulled. You see, I believed the UN was a force for good. I believed, as you've just described, David, until luckily Sandi came onto my scene and started to put me right, didn't you, Sandi?
Yes, I suppose I did. I don't know, but I was trying to put a lot of people right simply because, it's interesting that it's almost like we almost need a documentary made about the deception of the Earth Summit and how it heralded this whole green agenda that is actually the technocratic agenda. It's the opposite of green. And there was a whistleblower at that Earth Summit, and his name was George Hunt. And I don't know whether you've ever heard of him, David.
Oh, yeah, George Hunt. Yeah, I've written a lot about him over the years.
He's incredible. And he spent the whole of his life really trying to expose what happened at the Earth Summit. And there was one businessman there, and he's on YouTube. A guy called David Lang, I think he was a Canadian businessman, and at the Earth Summit he's being questioned by or interviewed by Edmund de Rothschild, and he says yes, it's we'll have to bring this in incrementally because obviously they won't buy it, and it'll take too much time if we do it slowly to influence the cannon fodder that unfortunately inhabit this earth. If people, when I actually put that in my PowerPoints, people go, oh my goodness, this is what they're really like, these globalists. They don't care about us. They call us cannon fodder, and I think if a lot of people who really bought into this whole agenda really realize the deception behind it and the fact that Maurice Strong later on, when he was exiled to China after the oil to food scandal, he set up a company with George Soros, called Cherry, creating carbon unfriendly cars and sold them to America from China. I mean, this is a man with no scruples whatsoever. I mean, I just cannot believe the hubris of these people. And yet people are following it like sheep. And maybe if they knew the deception behind the Earth Summit and behind the Green Party, and how, and bless her, I don't know whether anybody knows, but Rosa Corey passed 3 days ago.
Yeah.
And she was my mentor, we spoke often, and she's, she wrote Behind the Green Mask that got me switched on. And that is a seminal book, really, about how the Green Party was taken over by the globalists, like a Trojan horse, and it is the Trojan horse of the global agenda, that the globalists literally took it over, and the whole CO2 nonsense started. We know the science on CO2. Piers has been pushing it out for years, and loads of other scientists also. And you've got the Global Warming, Policy Foundation. All those people work really hard to get the real science out. And if we were able to, I don't know how we do this. We've been banging on about it for years. How do we get it through to them? I don't know.
Well, when we talk about scientists, the Hardwick Alliance, one of the people that we do things in memory is the late and very great David Bellamy, Professor David Bellamy. And I was fortunate enough to know him as a friend, and I was in his house about a few months after the BBC had let him go because he wouldn't subscribe to man-made global warming. And I can remember seeing him filling in the kettle, water. He was making a cup of tea for me. He was filling the kettle. And he just turned to me in sad eyes and he said, "Justin, this is all bad science, Justin, bad science." And he was devastated that he was no longer going to be able to put his real ecology in front of young people. He was a brilliant man for waking youngsters up to the love of nature and how nature works and how important it was to keep ecology going. He was a real scientist. And so, like Rosa, we've got to keep these people, we've got to show people these fantastic people here before, and we've got to carry on their good work.
People need to feel that they have something which they value and which is going to be destroyed. You see, they need to feel they have something of value to defend against the dark forces and the centralized cabal. If you don't have the thing you feel, and I'm emphasizing the word feel, the value, if you don't feel the value, and it is heart-led, you don't know what you're defending. Actually, you don't think you're defending anything really, other than possibly some sort of materialistic existence. That's why one of the things that is worth continuously plugging, I think, is for people who are beginning to awaken to these issues and recognizing the scam at the base of this. And it's good to go back to the Earth Summit. Of course, you can go back an awful lot further to the Club of Rome, well beyond that. But nevertheless, start there. Yeah, it's almost in most people's lifetime still, after all. And then encourage them to start trying to grow some food of their own, trying to produce a small amount of their own power, like a small windmill, trying to do something which gradually, because they did it and they did it with their own hands, they start feeling proud of. And if you feel proud of something, then you're prepared to seriously defend it. Then you're prepared to put yourself on the line and fight to the death, ultimately, to defend that thing. And I think that's part of our work, is to encourage people to once again recognize and value qualities because they themselves are part of doing them and not listening to other people from high places who haven't got the first idea what it actually means to be based on the ground level.
Yeah, just another thing going on from that, Julian, is the other thing about that is to be individual on other levels too, because the big problem that has allowed this woke mentality to prevail is the fact that people, in their insecurity, look outside of themselves for security.
Yeah.
So if you want people to like you and to think you are nice or intelligent, then you've got to tell them what they want to hear, because that's what they'll think. And if you stand up and speak your truth, like I was talking about earlier, then you're not going to get that that comeback. So the strength has to come within yourself. And so you've got these leaders of the Green Movement, like I said earlier, that are themselves prisoners of the Green Movement, because they are virtue signalers. I mean, politicians are obviously the ultimate virtue signaler, because they're always trying to get people to support them and vote for them. But they are constantly telling people what they want to hear. And so what you get with the Caroline Lucases, is this guy Barclay still involved?
Yes, he's still there.
Oh my God, don't start me. Is that when they're asked a question, you know what their answer is before they do.
Yeah.
It's straight off the virtue signaling script, off the song sheet. Yeah. And it's this individuality that says, this is me, take it or leave it, this is me, this is what I think. This is what this cult is trying to destroy, not least through to destroy people's self-respect. Yeah. So that people do not express their uniqueness, but actually follow the herd. And the Green Movement is a herd. It's a herd, and it's a herd right up to the leadership, because the shepherd is not in the Green Party. The shepherd is in the billionaire class. That's the one they're following.
That's a good description.
Yeah, can I just say, yesterday on Southwest local television, they showed Extinction Rebellion marching to the G7 summit in Cornwall, and they literally gave 2/3 of the local Southwest television, ITV, to all about Extinction Rebellion and climate change. And one of the things they showed, and apparently they did this last year, was those dreadful satanic, like white-faced women or whatever, dressed in red, going out into the sea, looking, I mean, it's frightening, it's horrible, it's evil-looking, satanic. And yet you then saw Granny saying, oh, it's wonderful, they're going to save the planet. Oh boy.
That is the ultimate.
It's the biggest irony, isn't it? Isn't it the biggest irony? I mean, it's a piece of theatre that's been financed by George Soros and the globalists to, to really pull people in, and it's fake. It's unbelievable what people are believing. Yeah, I don't know what we do, because you try and talk to people, and they will believe something because they've seen it on the BBC or the ITV. And I don't know whether you listened to the UK column the other day, but there was a woman phoned in, and she'd said that she was because the ITV had put out this whole propaganda thing that morning, that people who were unvaccinated were selfish and dreadful, and it was just awful what they were saying. And this woman said she'd stopped off at a motorway service station in Wellington, just not down the road from me. And apparently she was being served, and there was a woman in the queue saying people who were unvaccinated should be put into camps and separated from the rest of society. Yeah. And it really upset this woman to the point where she complained to the manager and said, I can't listen to this nonsense. And the management said that they agreed with this woman. And you just think, this is crazy, but that's what we're living with, and it's trying to reverse that is what we're trying to do, and it's a big job. And it's almost like I'm feeling right now that some form of lawful direct action has to be taken on people like ITV, BBC. How can they continue to push this?
You're referring to occupying the BBC, aren't you?
Well, there is talk that lawfully we could do that, yes.
Yeah.
Good one.
And that's what I'd like to see happen at this point, because how we accelerate it. We've only got this summer to sort this out, no?
Yeah, I think 2021 is definitely a pivotal year, but I just tell you from my own experience, I gave up a long time ago trying to convince anyone of anything.
Yeah.
You put the information out there, and those who hear can hear, those who can't won't. And This is again, with this, there's a number of things that are very clearly happening simply from the number of reports worldwide. One is that there's shedding going on, or transmission going on from. People debate how, but it's obviously something's happening on that level. And the other thing is that people who have this is a constant theme that I keep picking up, that their personalities change. They become, the word that's being used a lot is vacant. They become vacant. Now, I know people close to me who said, look, you know, my so-and-so, my mother has just completely changed. It's not the same person. So I think that, you know, we can waste our time and waste our frustration on trying to wake people up that are not they're not going to wake up.
No.
But just keep putting the information out there, and those who hear will hear. And the number in this new society that we're talking about will increase. I mean, if you look back to, and I remember it well, to the spring of 2020, try to explain to anyone that it's not anything but real, and it's not a scam, and there is a dangerous, and the government are just trying to protect us. I mean, you know, if anyone's got a phone box, we might get it half full. But now look at it. All these people on the streets who've seen it. So an awakening is going on. And I think, you know, that we need to use our energy in that area where awakening is possible, because increasingly, I don't think it is with a lot of people. I think they're going deeper in the coma, not coming out.
Yeah. Okay, at this juncture, it's coming up for 1:15. I think we've actually covered a lot more ground than our original question one, which is good. And we've actually covered some of the other questions to some extent. Should we just review what other things we were proposing to talk about? So question two, HARE was formed in February 2020 to counteract the despotic centralization of power and the bastardization of true ecology. What are the key strategies to achieve this end? And I think we've covered that in some detail. We've also covered question three, decentralization of power means a revival of regional and local self-empowerment. How will this work in practice? And I think we've covered that to quite a good extent as well. But if there's more to be said, then let's say it. We've also touched on the fourth one, which is, but I think this is probably one of the most important, is what communication methods can be applied to reach larger audiences and offer key strategic survive and thrive advice. And I think we've touched on that to some extent, but it's, you know, what do we, I think we've said clearly, it's no good trying to wake the unwakeable. For the most part, the Greens are probably unsalvageable. Those who've seen what's going on have woken up of their own accord and left or gone to do something else. So I tentatively put it to you that the conclusion, one of the conclusions of this meeting is, let's not bother trying to wake the Greens.
Well, I think, you know,
Per se.
It's like everything, you know. What the woke mentality, identity politics wants us to believe is that a group basically has one mind. So all of this group are like this, and all of that group are like that. So identity politics says that group bad, that group good. That group can never say anything wrong. That group can never say anything right. So what we call the green arena is still a spectrum, and I do think there are people within it that will be open to seeing the world differently, but they have to choose to look. You know, you take the horse to water, but you can't make it sup. That's absolutely a truism. You put the information out there, but you can't make people believe it. And we obviously don't want to make people believe it, or we become a mirror of what we're trying to challenge. But I do think that within society as a whole, not just the Greens, is this awakening consciousness that it wouldn't call itself green, and maybe doesn't have too much of an opinion about the environment, except that it doesn't believe in global warming caused by humans, but is open to the bigger picture of what's happening, and is coming from the heart. That's key. Because if you're coming from the heart, you are going to have an instinctive empathy with nature anyway.
Yeah.
I was going to jump in there, David.
People that are asleep.
I think this is really right. And I was going to touch on the word spiritual. If we'd written another point, it would have probably been, how can one awake the spiritual in people? But actually, talking about the heart and talking about spirituals is actually the same thing. There's no point in sort of separating them out. But there is perhaps a point in recognizing that we ourselves as individuals have work to do. And I mean, I actually believe practice as you preach. I was probably brought up at a time when that was a fairly obvious expression used, and it was even taught at school. Practice as you preach. So the people who are giving the messages out today that other people need to hear also have to go on doing the work on themselves. And we have to keep working on ourselves to make sure we're making progress. We have to be in movement spiritually, because we have plenty of power still to give, more power than we already are. Some of us more, some of us less. And we need to be like beacons, I think, attracting more and more love, a thought processes, a thought vibrational level, which is very similar to the ones which operate on the planet on a very natural process. You could even say like the Schumann resonance itself, which is under huge attack from things like 5G and the satellites and all the rest of it up in space. So in order to get back onto the wavelength of those resonances of nature, we in our own rights also have to work at making sure that we rise higher and higher and higher as human beings and show what the human being can achieve in the course of a lifetime. And then, of course, more and more people are attracted. When there's a light shining and there's darkness around, people are attracted to the light. And I don't mean this on a personal level. On the contrary, I mean it on a collective level. It's nothing to do with ego. It's to do with our own desire to keep moving forward. And then we become more and more of a beacon, and we attract more and more people. And lastly, I do actually very much agree with what David said, that we shouldn't waste our energy trying to convert people who are not interested in making the change from within themselves. It's obvious. It's actually obvious when you stop to think about it, that is a waste of our energy. We must direct our energy into areas where people are thinking, at least, or concerning themselves that this might not be right. That's the in-between group that we still can get. This can't be right, can it? The logic seems impossible. It seems crazy. Those people we can still get, but not the ones who've had 2 vaccines already and are going to do whatever they're told to do. That's another world completely, and that's out of our hands.
I was interested in what you just said, Julian, about Schumann resonance. And what just come to me is, why is Schumann resonance being attacked so vehemently through electromagnetic technology sources? Well, it's the answer is the same as why do they want us to social distance? Because the Schumann resonance connects all things, right? There's a point where everything operates on the same frequency, the same unity, and thus everything becomes one. Well, they don't want that. So, I've always looked at it. What does this cult want? Because if it wants it, then the answer is the opposite, and it wants division. Right down to Schumann resonance. It wants division. It wants disunity. It wants isolation, separation. So, the answer is to do the opposite, and that's what this challenging consciousness is about. It is about coming together and not being separated. I mean, you walk through the streets of London, everyone's hugging everybody else.
Yes, wonderful. Yeah.
You know.
Can I just come in and say, when it comes to what we're going to do and challenges and stuff, I'm shortly moving up to Snowdonia. My family and I were moving up to Dolgellau, and we're only a stone's throw from Mahuntcliff, which is the
So you'll be getting higher, Justin.
Yes, I will be, yes, but the Centre for Alternative Technology. Now, here was a place when it was all getting started, I used to go and visit, and it was spiritual, it was fantastic, it really made you believe what you can do for yourself, your gardening, energy, local energy, whatever it was just a lovely place to go and was spiritually uplifting. It's now become a corporate arm of the Green New Deal. It has become cold. I went up there about 4 years ago and I saw a complete change. So my own personal challenge is to see if I can go back there to sow the seeds till they start going back to the heart, till they start to look at what they're doing, the spiritual side of what they're doing. It'll be fascinating because I do believe a lot of them have just been taken for a ride. And we'll see. They've been probably have given a lot of money. I don't know. But that's my own personal challenge to see if I can get Mahuntcliff, the Centre for Alternative Technology, to reverse a bit and to go back the way we've been discussing. And the second thing is, I can remember back in 1978, 79, I went to Rome, I saw the Vatican, and I hadn't read David's book. David hadn't been writing then. I did read a book about the Pope John Paul I, the smiling Pope, who people say was murdered. And I remember going into the Vatican, having read this book about John Paul I, thinking what a cold, horrible place it was. It was not nice. But I went to Assisi and I met, it would just happened, there was a festival on for ecology involving all the religions of the world. And you just met ordinary, lovely people, Buddhists, Hindus, Sikhs, Catholics, Jews, Christians, the lot. And it was just a wonderful atmosphere of love for the planet. And that's maybe what we should be organizing, more of these wonderful events where people come to love the planet and themselves.
Yeah, I think also that you know, we've got to let the bloody labels go.
Yeah.
Labels divide us. If we can perceive the labels of life as experiences and the true I as the consciousness having that experience, then you start to say, well, hold on a minute, you know, I'm a point of attention of the same consciousness that you are, and you are, and you are. And if we come into the 5 sense mind of sense of reality only, then we go back to how I started out, we don't see the field that connects us all. We only see the apparently illusory empty space between us, and we give the forms within the empty space names and labels, and they divide us, and they've been used to divide us. So, you know, someone's having an experience as a Hindu, good luck to you. As long as you know that actually that's an experience and it's not your true I. And you're a Christian, you're an atheist, whatever. I mean, that's an experience. That's a belief system that you have in this moment. But we're all one consciousness. And we're the same consciousness as the forest and the rain. We're all one infinite flow of awareness in different states of perception.
Yeah.
That connection breaks down these divisions, which are essential for the few to control the many, because we have to be divided and ruled. And that's one of the great things about, well, at least at the moment, about this pushback is people, perhaps because we find ourselves in such an extreme mutual situation that, you know, you don't see those divisions at the moment that you see in the rest of society.
Well, you can see that if you look at it from another angle, another perception, you could say that it is actually what the human race needed to get back to that very state that you're describing, David. Because what is it? You know, we've often said, until your back is against the wall, you never really take the full action which you are capable of. And, you know, when you kept in your imagination, one kept wondering, well, what is that point? You know, how much further back does one have to get till one hits that wall? If that's the only way people are going to change. Well, it looks like the wall has been put into our backs without us really being ready for it. Well, we thought maybe 10 years ahead, 20 years ahead, whatever. But suddenly that wall is right bang there and we're up against it. We're hitting our heads against it. And it could be, and it looks like, in fact, apart from the fact that there will be undoubtedly horrific issues with many, many people passing for one reason or another under these sort of circumstances. It's inevitable, I think. There will also be the rising up of people who have finally hit their back against the wall and decided they've got to move forward because there's no other direction to move in. There is no other direction to move. And therefore, if you see it in that light, we can take strength from it. You know, we can really say, my God, we're going to use this moment to really get humanity moving.
One of the phrases I've used in the books here and there is life tends to give you your greatest gifts brilliantly disguised as your worst nightmare. And I think that's what we're facing now. Yeah. And there's a quote by Michael Yeadon, the scientific advisor to Pfizer at one point, who was really in the system. And he did an interview recently and he said, I've reached the point where I can no longer see a for why what is happening is happening. And once you cross that line, then you're in a different world. And so it is a great opportunity because, you know, you can have background, what I call background anxiety, but it's never bad enough that, oh, I have to deal with this. But then you get a big trauma and you have to deal with it. And we've had this background manipulation, generation after generation after generation, throughout known human history. The few have controlled the many. And now it's entered the room. It's come out of the shadows. Anyone with a brain can see it. So we have the opportunity to actually get rid of it, get rid of it at last after all this time. It's a great opportunity, Julian. Absolutely right.
Yeah, good.
One other thing that I feel is that, you know, you're absolutely right. We can't convince people who won't be convinced, and it is a waste of our energy. But I do also feel that somehow from studying, you know, what's happening in the agenda, all the goals that they've made or they've tried to achieve, the cabal, New World Order, call them what you like, all those goals over the last 30 years since the Earth Summit, they haven't achieved those goals, and they're getting very desperate, as we can see. And I feel that, you know, now with the reactions and all that kind of stuff, and I know it's all being suppressed, but there'll be a limit to how far they can suppress all that when it kicks in, and in an organic way, it will all come to pass. That the truth will come out, and I think that this is the way I sort of, I don't know, I kind of put it to rights in my own head, is that, you know, so long as we just keep chipping away like we have, and if you look at it, David's right, in the last year, I remember going to the first protest as a handful of people. We've now got 1.5 million on the streets. You know, a huge amount of ground has been covered, and that if we just keep chipping away, we've now got Fauci having to answer questions about the origins of this, whatever you want to call it. And you know, I think that there's something being gained here, which will organically happen, and people will begin to wake up. It'll be too late, but they will begin to wake up, and I think it will be soon. I've just got this feeling that the good will prevail. It has to.
Yeah, well said.
We have to remain human.
Yeah, very good.
There was another point, the fifth question, which was, I'll read it, to expose the fake green man-made climate change and technocratic narratives, we need to present sound counter-evidence. Given that some of the so-called climate change deniers have been exposed as industry shills, who are the real credible scientists, and where is the scientific evidence to support our claims? And I personally think this is quite important, because it's in all the work that I do, research and solid evidence is absolutely indispensable. You have to back every claim you're making with evidence, you know, ideally primary source evidence that people can go and check for themselves and say, yeah, these are reputable scientists, they're saying this, it totally contradicts the official narrative on global warming or the efficacy of 5G and sort of the technocratic surveillance grid. We need, I feel we need to marshal those facts. Don't know whether anybody has any thoughts on that.
Absolutely. I mean, I've spoken to quite a few scientists, apart from, you know, peers, and Philip Foster's a very good one. He's a scientist who has written a whole load of stuff on the global warming scam. Unfortunately, Christopher Booker's passed on, but his group think is very, very accurate on global warming. It's a PDF that you can get on the web.
So who was that, Sandy?
His name was Christopher Booker. He was a journalist.
Christopher Booker, yeah, he's great researcher.
He's got so many facts on how this has been, you know, created, and his PDF called climate, the groupthink behind climate change, because it was it was another psychological operation, and that is a seminal work. And Niels Axel Morner, I've worked with him when we went down to Fairbourne in Wales. It's a beautiful little village that literally it's going to be evacuated under sea level rise. And it's beautiful. It's got a little railway that runs along the front there. But all the people there are being evacuated by 2025 under sea level rise, which is, we took Niels Axel Morner down there, and he proved that there was no sea level rise in England at all, well, globally. And he used to work for the IPCC, but he was kicked out because he was telling the truth. So there are these amazing people who stand up and decide to put their jobs on the line, you know, but they're few and far between, because the IPCC, you know, you get very few of them because they're on a gravy train, you know.
There are more and more of them, actually. I mean, almost every day you hear about another one coming forward. That's the optimistic side of it, I think. Also, I would say this, that we are trying to catch up with our spiritual heart-led side, but we're trained into being intellectual. Where the Western world, if you like, is very intellectually trained in Europe, North America, etc. Therefore, I see the logic and the value in following up what you're saying there, Adrian, which is that people looking for facts, if you like, intellectually, so to speak, need to get the best and right facts, and they need to make that available. And the UK column has done a very good job with this, I would say, and so have a number of other organizations intent upon getting the correct version of the it's not going to be, in my mind, the majority mover, this particular information, but some of the people who get hold of these facts can then move to their colleagues, because they're usually working in the same genre, high up in universities, in academia, quasi-politics, some of it, etc. They can then hammer the next one along, and they can prove through logic that this person's argument is incorrect. Doesn't even stand the most basic logistical test, you know. This is how all peer-reviewed stuff has to work in science, after all. And that, if we can get scientists with big names who easily get a big platform, more of them, to come out with the real truth, of course, that's going to be a major part of the big change that we're hoping to achieve.
Yeah, I'm not sure here. I've been writing about global warming and the hoax for, ages, decades. I've never had a problem finding enough evidence and scientists in the different disciplines. Because, you know, if you're looking for someone that kind of can give you everything, well, you look forever. But if you look at the different disciplines, like sea level rises and stuff, and then you weave it together, it can be very, very compelling. Yeah. You talk to carbon dioxide experts who say, actually, it's not that we got too much, we haven't got enough. You know, if you weave this information together, I mean, there's a guy called Joe Bastardi. I've got his book here called The Climate Chronicles up there. And he started out as a kid, and he's just a weather bloody a clone. He's just obsessed with weather since he was a kid, and he's gone through all these cycles, weather cycles, which are now called global warming, and shown they just repeats the cycles that've been there before. So these people exist. It's just getting them together and weaving their information together.
Yeah. There's also the Global Warming Policy Foundation, and there's a lot of scientists that contribute to that. There's a website, so
yeah,
that's
very good. That is,
yeah, brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
And I
Yeah.
know
Sandi, which one was that again? The Globals?
Well, the Global Warming Policy Foundation.
Right.
And I will have to go and see the good people of Fairbourne, because obviously I'm now going to be living about 10 miles
Well,
from
I think you could do some good work there. I mean, I must admit, when we went down there, we travelled down the night before and stayed with some friends, and unfortunately, the local radio station and the BBC had leafleted the entire town to say that we were right-wing extremists.
Oh my
and
God.
had people with banners outside when we arrived saying that we were peddling misinformation. But we spoke to there were a lot of people from Fairbourne came. They were distraught because their houses, it is actually very much a retirement place. There's lots of bungalows. Everything is very low level there, and it sits right in the snow, in a bowl of the Snowdonia National Park with the mountains either side. And to be honest, if you look at it, it could be, why have they chosen to evacuate Fairbourne and say that the sea level rise is going to be so bad, when in fact they destroyed the sea wall. They took it down. And the people are saying, well, our houses are worth nothing now. And they've been told they've got to move out by 2025. And I thought, this is, again, I bet you could look on the Environmental Agency's policy documents and find that they've decided to designate it to the wetlands, in the park, because that's...
Is that Fairbourne with the railway near Barmouth?
It is. It's a pretty little...
lovely place.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And the railway is gorgeous. It's a little small gauge thing.
Yeah, no, been on it.
And it's really lovely. It potters down to Barmouth. And I'm just amazed that
It's an extraordinary story.
People have all accepted. This is what I can't get. A lot of the
Quite
people
incredible.
accepted it. Yeah,
Yeah,
unbelievable.
they're really incredible.
First climate change refugees. That's what I call them.
Yes. Yes.
Fake climate change refugees, but there you are. Yeah.
Well, I've got my work cut out then, haven't I?
You certainly have. It's a good. Maybe you were meant to be there, Justin. I think you were.
Maybe.
We can't let that train go, Justin. We can't.
No.
Well, I'll
That's
have
for
you up
sure.
there.
No,
You can come up with me, and we'll go and knock on all the doors.
Good.
Even if it was just to preserve the railway, I think you should be doing it.
So on question 4 regarding the communication methods, it seems to me that we might usefully have a push to promote awareness of Hardwick Alliance throughout the cooperative network and the Freedom Hub network. Just make sure that people are aware of this resource so they can get access to the information. And as we were saying earlier, I think that there is very much an organic movement. Witness the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people who turning up in London for the demos. They are completely on board. There's a very strong sense of real green values amongst all those people. And I think we can take some encouragement from that.
Well, I think when Julian and I set up the Hardwick group, Hardwick Alliance, we want it to be a gentle way of approaching people. We don't want it to be a sort of big non-governmental organization, corporate sort of approach. We want it to be a more gentle approach to get people to start thinking. And I would refer people to our to our logo, which is great fun, of the hare looking at a signpost that simply says, you know, green fascism one way and real ecology the other. And one wit said to me, your logo was Beatrix Potter meets Klaus Schwab.
I love that.
That sums it up. We are a more gentle way of getting to people, saying, guys, look at what's happening. Just perhaps reevaluate the information you've been given by the BBC, ITV, the Sky, and the mainstream news, and just engage your heart and just ask yourself, start questioning what's happening. So that's the raison d'etre of Hardwick. It's a gentle way to get people to start to reconsider.
Yes, I think that's quite right, Justin. And also Hardwick itself as a place, as an estate, is undergoing some quite interesting moving, thanks to my own children, I'm very happy to say, who have taken on board, I say, all the idealism that I had around about the same age as them, and are moving forward. In fact, what they want to do, I had a sort of vision of the future of Hardwick Estate when I was 24 years old, and almost everything that I had that feeling about is happening now. But the main one probably is an attempt, a move to change it out of private ownership and into a cooperative. So actually, to be honest with people who are watching this is from two motivations. One is to avoid it being completely destroyed via capital gains tax and inheritance tax. If I die, when I die, that was a bit of a faux pas. When I die, which would come in at around 45% of the value of the estate, which would mean the whole thing, you know, that all my life's efforts are really centralized around Hardwick, creating a community of active artisans and all the rest of it there. That would have to go. And we don't, none of us, the family, really can bear that idea. So on one hand, making it into a charitable institution, a cooperative, avoids those taxes, means Hardwick can go forward. But secondly, you know, I know, coming from the sort of background I'm coming from, I know the colonial past that made it possible for my great-grandfather to buy that place. And I know what hell went on in the countries where the British sent the troops to capture the colonies and how they treated people when they were there. And I know the wealth that flowed back because of that. And I know that's the reason why this place is a beautiful place. And I'm very fortunate to have inherited it, at least in the last 150 odd years I'm talking about now. The place is actually Elizabethan. It goes back a very long way. So there is the more idealistic reason for turning it into cooperative, to share the wealth, And the thing is, we need people who are private landowners. England's 50% of all the land in England is owned by private landowners. Many of them large families, aristocratic families going back a long way. So we need role models of people who are going to go forward and show there's another way of doing all this now. It's going to change. We're not going to just hoard our wealth, protect our boundaries, and claim some sort of God-given powers of knowledge and wisdom when we don't have it. And we've got to now share it with people who do have it, but it hasn't come out fully yet. And it's going to be very exciting. So if I ever can get back to England again, David, I'll be carrying on the good work of making the estate into something which is more of a shared cooperative enterprise where the wealth is shared and the status of the old aristocrat is changed.
And also, remember, Hardwick House is the original Toad Hall.
Justin, you will never forget that.
I will never forget. I was brought up on Wind and the Willows, and to think that I've come to Hardwick, which is the real Toad Hall, it's part of my...
Yes, I'm the great-grandson of Mr. Toad, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, quite.
Okay, so we've been going for an hour and 3/4, somewhat longer than planned, I think. Should we just go around and let's have everybody just give their closing comments? Let's start with Justin.
Well, I obviously with what we've just all been discussing, one of the things I do feel we've got to embrace is humour and laughter in what's going on, because it's a very serious subject matter, what we're engaged in. But the more you can laugh and the more you can use humor, the more attractive as a movement we then become. Because I think people are fed up with being kept in fear. Everything is about fear at the moment, and imposition of fear. What about the imposition of happiness and laughter and being human? And I think that's what we are about. And we just hope that that message will get through to our friends in the Green Movement who have been led astray. And there's nothing wrong to admit you've been led astray. I have been led astray many times. I've gone down cul-de-sacs. At one stage, I believed in man-made warming. And then I realized I was wrong. And I can hear the dog agreeing with me.
Thank you, Justin. Over to you, David.
Well, I just think that it's about self-identity. If you perceive yourself as consciousness having an experience, and you don't get caught in the trap that the experience is the true I, then everything changes. Things start to chill out. You play the long game. You know, we're on an eternal journey of exploring forever, and you don't get caught in the intensity to the same extent of the 70 years and 10, which is a very brief human experience. And so you don't get intimidated in the same way. Someone in a uniform or a dark suit official doesn't have an intimidation potential with someone who knows they're all that is and ever can be having an experience. And the other thing that happens when you do that is your heart opens. This heart vortex, which is the biggest connection to the field, to the greater reality. And one of the things that happens when that happens, as Justin has just talked about, is you laugh, you know, because it is hilarious. It is hilarious. I mean, you know, we're having people walking around in face nappies, protecting themselves from something that's never been shown to exist. I mean, it is hilarious. And you can take it seriously, and we need to, because on that level, we need to do something. But at the same time, you see the bigger picture, and you don't get so intensified and focused on all the things that are happening that are you know, challenging, that you don't see the greater picture. Where all that is, has been, and ever can be, having an experience, and that's as bad as it gets. And when this experience is over, there'll be another one, and another one, and another one, and another one, and we'll probably forget about this one at some point. So you know, it's being at peace with yourself and at peace with your true identity, from which everything else comes, I think, because you look at the head people, which is what the Green Movement has become. And it's intense, and it's divisive, and it wants power over, and all these things, these conflicts that go on. Whereas when your heart's open, all you want is peace, and justice, and fairness, and connecting with each other, and respecting everyone else to be their expression of uniqueness, which is what you are. It's just a very different way of living your life. And I do see that emerging in so many people which the era has awoken, when probably, like Julian was saying earlier, probably without it, they wouldn't have done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, David. And over to Sandi.
Well, it was actually what David said is so wonderful, actually, and actually everyone's contributions today, because it kind of gets into perspective, really, about the madness of what's going on right now, and how, in a way, stepping out of that madness and being centered, and being looking at it calmly for what it is. Which is the biggest deception that's ever been foisted on humanity. And quite honestly, if we can move forward, I think maybe some kind of humorous and gentle, not gentle, but I can't find the words really, down to earth, maybe a bit of Hardwick media might be a good idea, doing a few interviews with scientists who really know what's going on.
Yeah, good idea.
People, and getting the Hardwick media thing going a little bit more. So that we can actually introduce the a calm way of just proving the insanity of what is going on, and how it is. We are, you know, Beatrix Potter meets Klaus Schwab. You know, we are literally, you know, to the hair taking on the technocracy, and I think that might be a really good idea. Yeah.
Great, I love that. Beatrix Potter meets Klaus Schwab.
Quite funny. Yeah.
Only right and proper that we finish with Julian. Thank you.
I had this thought because I think it's such an extremely good quote. The only trouble is I used it in one of my books, and now I don't know exactly what it is, but I'm going to try and just get the gist of it across. I think it was Einstein who said it. He said that the evil, those that do evil in society are not the greatest problem. It is those that look on and do nothing where the real problem exists. And I think on that note, you know, that's the great wake-up call. To look on and do nothing, you cannot do that anymore. That's finished. That is finished. It is black and white now. There's no middle ground left. The fence has collapsed that people are sitting on, trying to find this middle ground. It doesn't exist. You're either for or against. And come on, everybody, you're for. It's obvious. That's life, isn't it?
Good versus evil. We're good.
Great. So yeah, my role today has just been to facilitate this meeting, and I would thoroughly endorse everything that everybody's said, especially about the spiritual dimension. I feel like we're, you know, humanity is at this tremendously challenging juncture, but it's only through struggle and opposition that you get to grow. You get to grow, and you find your strength. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. It's been great contributions.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Adrian. Bye-bye.